You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Empowering Process podcast. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I have with me a guest who is also a hypnotherapist, and it's Lauren Best. And Lauren and I are going to talk about those of us who are type A personalities and about having to be perfect before you pull the trigger. You've never heard I can remember being in corporate one time and they said, just, shoot then aim, right? And I'm like, no, first of all, I have to find the target and then I have to know where the bullseye is and then I have to know what kind of gun I have, right? Right. And then I have to really aim because what if I only have one bullet, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of stress that's all about. Welcome, Lauren.
So much, Gail. I'm so excited to get into this because there's so much.
There is so much into being perfect. I know that I used to pride myself in, being sure that all of my ducks are in a row. And we talked a little bit earlier, and you said you think it might be generational. I'm wondering whether it really is a woman thing more so than generational. Whether it's women need to have everything lined up in order for things to appear to be going smoothly. So tell us a little bit about some of the frustration that you felt and how you learned that from your mom and your grandma. What were the things that they did that you observed as a child?
Yeah, I think, and it's really funny, starting in this place of, is it a women thing or a hereditary, like I've, been born with this gene or whatever it may be, this generational thing. And then before I get into that, this popped into my head. So I want to share it, is like the amount of time society has reaffirmed that's like that to be true. So I'll back up a little bit of like growing up. I just remember always seeing, whether it was like family gatherings or, these beautiful holidays we would spend at my grandmother's, just like, the perfect turkey and like, all the most beautiful food on like beautiful, it's ceramics or whatever it may be. And we'd show up at my grandmother's house and my sister and I would run into the room that my aunt and my mom grew up in. And it would be like, the beds were made perfectly. And I remember seeing my grandmother just like ironing the pillowcases or the sheets. And I just thought like, oh my gosh, that's like so much work, right? Like I think, acknowledged how much work it was for them. And it was always like, them in the kitchen, or at the end of the meal, it was them like making sure the dishes were done really quickly. So like they can't enjoy the rest of the evening until that's all done. So I think there was a sense of urgency that I often saw and maybe experienced more so from my mom and my grandmother than maybe with my dad, which I do experience more of these days. But growing up, it was definitely them, just show it like by their example of like doing and getting things done, or like hosting people, having, the perfect napkins and tablecloth that would that would match, like all of those little things that did create such a beautiful experience for us growing up and for our family and for people that we would have around the house. And I think growing up with a household that was really open, our friends would show up at the door and come on in. And so there was that mix of like spontaneity that I did see that was really fun, and just like, don't worry about it, people are going to come around. But we had everything like, in the cupboards or ready if people were to come. But then also that like hyper planning and making sure that everyone is accommodated for, or we have all the cabbage rolls, procured before the big event. So I think that also gave me a lot of identity confusion growing up of like putting myself in a bucket. Am I type A, type B? I felt both. I don't know. I still don't really try to analyze it because I don't want to put myself in that box or either of those boxes. But it really
Yeah,
is
no.
like, yeah, it really was like, am I this? Am I like, do I need to be like this? But I want to be like this. I want to relax more, and didn't see that happening as much, from other people in my life growing up. So,
Yeah, I would say that, I saw the same thing in my family as far as, having everything perfect, especially for holiday seasons, weeks upon weeks of shopping and planning and preparing for that one meal at Thanksgiving or for the family
yeah.
coming at Christmas time. And and I remember, I mean, I don't throw big events anymore, but when I did, I just kind of wung it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it turned out just fine, right?
Mhm.
I don't know why my hand went up, sorry. And it turned out just fine. So,
Yeah.
what is that all about? And the type A personality, whatever that means, right, is the need to be, and I equate the need to be perfect along the same lines as the need to be in control,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right? And so that I know for me, my need to be in control was because I didn't trust the world,
Mhm.
right? And so I had to be in control because if I'm in control, then I can dictate what's next and it's safe
Right.
for me,
Yeah.
right? So you grew up around this questioning of like, this is really not cool, but am I supposed to be that way? And so,
Yeah.
what happened to you as a teenager and a young adult because of this upbringing of everything needs to be perfect, everything needs to be in a row, be sure you know where you're going? What were some of the
Mhm.
choices that you made because of that kind of belief system?
Yeah, I think it was again in like two extremes of like finding opportunities. Remember this so well when I was younger. I don't know if I was 10 or 15 or what age I was, but I know I was definitely in junior high or high school or something. And we had a really beautiful, I grew up in a very beautiful home and a beautiful big yard. And there was some landscaping my parents had hired people to do, but they left all these rocks on the grass. And so my parents were, enlisting my sister and I to like come help with the yard work on the weekend, like as they would. And I remember just thinking, like, how long do I have to do this before I can sneak off to the bathroom and not come back? Because I'm like, I just want to relax. I'm so tired. The sun is too hot, and just like this huge discomfort, which I'm sure, like, some kids also can relate to, or people can relate to. And then there's others that are just, like an activity to do, right? I just never experienced that, as I know some people have. So I remember doing that, like sneaking off to the bathroom, hiding in the basement, putting on TV or something, or getting myself a snack and being like, okay, like let's just hope they don't come back inside and enlist me back out to help with the yard work. And like I just felt so strongly like my body needed rest. And I didn't know how to say, like, I want to help you, but I don't have the energy because my dad had the energy, or maybe he didn't, but he was still doing it. Or my mom had the energy, or maybe she didn't, but she was still doing it. And my sister, right? Just like willingly helping out. And so I always was like never giving myself that permission to acknowledge that perhaps I function differently, or my energy level, or I need more rest, because it wasn't something demonstrated to me that people can, you know, maybe just like relax a little bit more on the weekend. That's just one example. So I don't think every weekend of my childhood was like that, but I think that sticks out to me as one of those examples of like me going back in my memory of finding that proof as to how I may be a little bit different or need to operate differently
So,
or, tend to my body a little bit differently.
so what's interesting is, so what you learned in that situation is, I I cannot say no, and the only way I
Mm,
can honor myself is to be sneaky about it.
totally.
Totally
Yeah.
sneaky about it, right? And
Yeah.
so what's interesting is I've recently had an encounter with a young teenager, and I had asked her to do something for me, and she said yes, but she really didn't want to. It was one of those wishy-washy yeses. And when the time
Mhm,
came, she didn't follow through. And
mhm,
so I ended up doing it. So I had a conversation with her the next day, and I said, "So I'm an adult,
mhm,
and I know that it's probably difficult for you to say no
mhm.
to an adult when they ask you to do something. And I know
Yeah.
you really wanted to say no, and you didn't." And so what ended up happening is I'd made plans on thinking you would show up and do this thing, and you didn't. And so I had
Right.
to change my plan. So let's make a deal. In the future, you have permission to say no to me, and you can say it in this way. And so someone gave me this line. You can say it's not a strong yes right now,
I love that.
right? And so she could say that, and I said, and then I'll say, okay, that's cool. I'll If you get to do it, fine. But in the meantime, I will now plan on doing it myself. If
Mhm,
I ask you to do something, you have permission to say no to me in that way. But if I tell you I need you to do something, I'm not looking for you to say yes or no. It means I
mhm.
need you to be there. I need your help. And we
Yeah,
have a deal. And so we had a deal, and things have been fine ever since,
that's great. It's
right?
that trust too, or that safety that I
That
think you
permission,
created for her.
right?
Yeah.
She needs to learn that she can say no, that she has a right to say no,
Mhm.
right? And we don't learn that. And
Yeah.
it's very, very interesting because we are not taught very well. Some people are, so it's a generalization, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
many of us are not taught how to be an adult and make choices, healthy
Mhm.
choices. We're not taught
Yeah.
about boundaries. We're not taught about our own biorhythms and how to honor that. We're not taught those things, right?
Yeah.
And so we hide them, we fight against them, we pretend they don't exist, and we
Mhm.
stress ourselves out, and then we become adults, and we are and now a dysfunctioning adult, not knowing how to
Right.
take care of ourselves. So you hid, um,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
right? Uh,
Yeah. And
and Go ahead.
yeah, and that I think I love that you brought that up in terms of it was like sneakiness. And even now, so like in I'm my own business owner. I don't work for anyone else, but like today where I woke up, feeling really excited for our conversation, but also not feeling like I have a bit of a headache that, often turns into a migraine. So I like woke up and said, I can show up for this. And then I'm giving myself that permission today. I had so many things that I wanted to cross off my to-do list today. Today was that day. And now I'm just giving myself that permission between now and seeing my next client, which is, in the afternoon, to just rest. Like I can rest. It's going to be okay.
The
Things will
world
get
will
done when
not end
they,
today.
yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
And I've had moments in my adult life where it was like when things didn't go well or to planned, where I hyper planned things and they didn't turn out. It was like the world was crashing down. Emotionally, I was so like distraught. And, I planned. How could something go wrong? How could anything, but there is that uncertainty of the world. There is just like so many things in our lives that also can be external factors to our plans. And I'm glad I'm at a point now where if little things don't go to plan, I can shrug it off and look for the silver lining and say, okay, the universe wants me over here instead, I guess. Let's go with it. But I was not operating in that capacity for most of my 20s. So now it's like this shift I've made, I think, going into my 30s and just seeing like, okay, what are boundaries? How can I create them? How can I stay open to like new possibilities happening for me I never imagined?
Right.
And how can I just recognize that uncertainty isn't something I can outplan, but it's not, and it's very real. And I don't have to necessarily, I was trying to embrace it for such a long time, but I think now I'm making the shift of like, how can I see the abundance of the world and of my life and of myself within this thing called uncertainty? So it's a journey, and it's one of those processes that you're going to, for me, I've shown myself in a short amount of time. Some people don't even really look at these concepts for most of their lives. So I feel like a lot of things really extreme kind of happened so that I could. But it is one of those things where I'm like, okay, let's keep making these shifts. Let's keep welcoming uncertainty and these different tests that are going to show me that there are different possibilities. There are different ways to react. There are new boundaries to create, or places to say, this is not a hard yes right now,
Right.
or a definite yes right now. So it's, I'm talking about it and I'm smiling because I'm like, oh, is it fun? Like to be, whereas it never used to be fun.
Right. Right. And that's the thing. And we take the joy out of life because we over plan. I hyper plan. I love that phrase used, hyper plan. Right. Um, so one of the functions I performed in corporate in my time was that of a program manager. So, big
Mhm.
projects need to be put in place, and I would orchestrate who needs to be at the table to make it happen. And my big thing was, I don't really care about the day to day, what has to happen. You guys know how to make it happen. Team, go do it. But
Right.
in the process of planning, there are risks showing up. And
Mm,
so I would measure, analyze, and determine what risks are worth my time,
right.
right? Many businesses will either say, because, as a contractor, I ran across this, there are no risks. And I'm like, if you think there are no risks, I'm surprised you have a business that survived, right? There are risks in life. And if there are some that you know about, right? What's in your care,
Mhm.
custody, and control? What can you control? Those are the ones that we want to look at,
Right.
because those we can incorporate in our plan and manage them.
Mhm.
Those that
Yeah.
we can't control, if this happens, here's how we will respond to it, and then let it go,
Yeah.
right? Or I have no idea how I'm going to respond to it, but the likelihood of it happening is like a 3 out of 10. So I'm not going to waste my time on it,
Right. Yeah.
right? Now, in our personal lives, we don't do that, right?
No.
We don't do that. And the three get sometimes, well, and I'll tell you a story about that, sometimes gets more attention than the 10. So
That's yeah.
right? So one of the projects I got to work on, and this will age me, was Y2K. And I was managing the business team on their risk mitigation.
Mhm.
And I had a team that had Weight Watchers as one of their customers. And then they had some major technical processes as part of they spent their focus on Weight Watchers.
Right.
And I could not move them off of that. They had, who cares if Weight Watchers can't bring their computers up?
Yeah.
They're gonna hold their meeting and people are gonna show up with their little scale.
Yeah.
Right? Right. Who cares? But if this system goes down, you have patients who are sick not getting their diagnoses,
Right.
right? And you're focusing on that. And I couldn't move their focus because
Right.
the fear, and this is another thing that control people are wrapped up, their fear of, I won't be able to handle that. That's too big for me. I can handle
Mhm.
this little
Mhm.
thing, which
Yeah.
is a waste of time. And that's what we
Yeah.
do. We waste our time. right?
Yeah.
So let's go back to when you were wrapped up into having all your ducks in a row. What were
Yeah.
some of the things that you wasted your time? Give us an example.
Yeah. Well, I think, it did bring me into, before I was a hypnotherapist, I was a service designer, business transformation consultant. And, that was my job, was to look at a business experience and look for those gaps and look for those areas of opportunity where we can design solutions that will create an easeful experience, not only for the clients or customers, but for the service provider and all the stakeholders that were involved. So I think that this, upbringing made me good at that, very good at that. But it also, when it came to execute some of my work, instead of getting a report together like this, there was a lot of misunderstanding that I experienced between my one of my bosses and what the client was asking for. And it was like, but I'm interpreting it this way and I'm seeing these gaps and these opportunities and this very clearly. And then, executing on what are these artifacts I'm designing or what reports am I putting together was really just like so disjointed. It felt with all these different people and different perspectives without being able to get, perhaps one person, or that one person felt like trying to get me on the same page as them. There was a lot of just,
Manipulation, manipulation.
yeah, well, yeah. And so I think that was like in my head of like, I'm not doing this right. I'm not good at this, but I'm trying so hard and I'm doing all the things. Why am I in this place where I feel like I'm going to get in trouble at any second? When I was a little kid hiding out inside from, not doing the rock
Right.
lifting.
Where's the ladies' room? I want to go to the ladies' room.
Yeah, even though I was doing this work, it was like never quick enough. It was never good enough. And it was just like, oh, come on. Now I'm like, how did I stay there so long? But it's just one of those things where we get in these patterns of like, okay, well, I want to prove it to myself, or I want to prove it to them that I am good at this, or that I can do the right thing. But it just can be such a vicious loop that doesn't really do any good for you or for anyone.
And communication is a whole other tricky, slippery slope to begin with.
Yes.
One of the things that I think it's one of the reasons why I was successful, that I learned early on, as a leader, is I will repeat back to you what I thought I heard you say,
Mhm.
right? And it would really, for some of the leaders, drive them nuts because they, again, a waste of time, a feeling of importance, a need to
Right.
control. They would go on for half an hour describing something. And when they were done, I would say in 3 sentences, so what I heard you say is, you need me to pull a report together that has 5 factors and they need to be measurable and concise. Well, if you want to put it that way, yes, that's what I said. Right. But I
Right.
needed to know it wasn't insulting, but it was. I needed to know that what I heard through all of the noise that they put, this
Mhm.
is what I took out of what you expect from me. Because if I'm wrong, I tell me right now,
Yeah.
right? So what I heard you say is what you want from me is this,
Mhm.
right? And as an entrepreneur, that's the kind of stuff that you want to know. What's your client's intention when they come for hypnotherapy? So how did you take the leap
Yeah.
into, yeah, hypnotherapy has so much to do with reports, and
Yeah.
corporate? Not at all. How did that happen? I listen to the part of the
Yeah.
stories I love.
Yeah. Well, I was working over in Singapore at the time, previously, think I arrived sometime in 2019. I think June 2019, and I was out of there August 2020. But I was working over there, and fast forward to the pandemic and, a very extreme lockdown there where, we couldn't leave the house at some points. So I was isolated for like 2 straight months. I think I went to the grocery store maybe once because I couldn't get a delivery, but I was like in my 4 walls or 5 walls plus ceiling for so long on my own. And my family was back in Canada and my job was toxic and it wasn't the right environment or the right place for me. And I ended up saying, that's it. I'm coming back to Canada. Like, I don't know why I stayed here for so long on my own. So I made my way back and I found myself back in my childhood room after, having this crazy experience with my workplace, like just the mental exhaustion, the emotional exhaustion, having, a relationship I was leaving behind, having this new home that thought I was building for myself totally gone. And I found myself back at home in the comfort of my parents. My sister had come back from Vancouver for what she thought would be a few months, turned into a year. So there I was trying to survive. I really felt like I was at minus, I don't know, 20. And just like all these things had happened, but no one I was around could really relate. And although the comfort and the love was there, it was like me in my head of like, what just happened to me? What is happening in the world? All these different things. And there's not one thing about my life right now that is the same as it was even a month ago or even 2 years ago. So I don't think I even processed that part right away or acknowledged that part right away. But it was this process of, okay, what am I going to do now? Do I find another job here in Canada? I had no intentions of moving back there. I had lived, before Singapore over in the UK for about 4 years. So it was never my intention to really come back. But there I was in this safety net of, okay, I can kind of process things, but still this urgency to feel like I should be getting a new job. And I was interviewing for things and there's a few that seemed like really good fits and nothing came of them. And now I know it's like I was never meant to work for someone else. Like this was really my chance to do things on my own. And when I realized after a lot of these interviews and these jobs didn't work out, this is my chance now to start my own business. I've always thought about it. I had studied business right out of high school and college. And, it was always kind of this intention of like, figure out what I can do to start a business, but let's work for other people first. And I was sitting there thinking, I am so discombobulated emotionally. My nervous system is all out of whack. I cannot imagine actually going back to work for someone 40 plus hours a week. I just energetically knew that my body needed rest. And I was still recovering from an appendix surgery that I had had back in Singapore. Like there was just all these things that I didn't really stop to process. So I thought, okay, let's ease into things. I joined this coaching group, which is so fantastic. And I was going through this process of designing my own business. And I thought, oh, this should be a piece of cake. I've done it for so many other people and so many other organizations or startups. And I was like just running and spinning in circles. And I just couldn't seem to figure it out. I couldn't seem to feel safe enough to put myself out there. Looking back, I think that was my biggest thing because I really was in fight or flight still, and my nervous system was out of whack. So I started kind of just looking into all these different circles. I started attending different summits. My mom would send me, because my mom was really into, energetics and healing and movement. So she sent me this link to this online summit, and there was my hypnotherapist, who's now my mentor, and she was doing a talk about hypnosis. And I thought, that's who I need to see. Like, I never really considered hypnosis before or thought much of it, but I thought, okay, there's something that makes me want to say yes to working with her. So I decided it was the biggest investment I'd ever made for myself. Like, I'd never grown up going to therapy. I never had grown up, investing in something like this. So it was like a big investment financially and like that chance on myself. But I thought, no, like I'm worth it. And I never quite had that feeling before of like, yes, yes, yes. So it was an easy yes. I started working with her and just really realized how much of, these things that might have seemed small in my childhood or little moments really have impacted to who I have shown up as, or the behaviors that I'm having, or the cycles I'm finding myself stuck in a loop in. So I really just started peeling back all of those layers. And I was coaching a few people at the time, solopreneurs in their businesses. And my hypnotherapist also trains hypnotherapists. So she reached out to me and said, this is this course that I'm running. And I said, okay, we didn't really talk much about it. And then one day I just remember thinking, I think I need to do that course. I think I need to become a hypnotherapist. I don't know why, but I'm still working through things, but let's just see. Let's just see what happens. And it was like while I was learning, I was still working through so much stuff. Like to say that I had all my stuff figured out before doing that was a heck no. So I think it was one of those, actually maybe the first time to that extent where I showed myself I didn't have to have everything perfect before I started and finished something. I could show up in the best capacity that I could show up in. I can still be moving through the motions of things. And I can also be a successful hypnotherapist. I don't have to be, I don't have to have all my ducks in a row. So that was really cool to show myself that
Oh,
on
Lauren,
top of being a hypnotherapist.
I've not met anyone yet who has all of their personal ducks in a row,
Exactly.
right? So, so, you know,
Yeah.
yes, you can get to an amazing point, but that doesn't mean there's not a little ducky quacking around somewhere that got
They'll
loose in the
always
pack.
be. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So, so was your mom kind of pushing you? I wouldn't say pushing you, but pointing you in the direction of personal development.
Yes.
This
Yes.
one
Definitely.
kind of resonated with you, and you took
Mhm.
a chance on you.
Yes.
What do you think might have changed for you that you took a chance on you? Because many people
Mhm.
hyperventilate when they think about taking a chance on themselves. They
Yeah.
will take a chance on any company that thinks they're just a number, but
Mhm.
won't take a chance on themselves.
Yeah. I think it was this, and I don't know if it was a moment or just this like feeling of I can't keep doing what I'm doing now because I feel so misaligned from who I am. I don't feel like me. I'm not sure the me that I was before is the me I'm looking for, but I know this person right here right now is going through a lot of things and I don't want to have to do it alone because I had also became, there were certain things that I'd gone through that I didn't want to keep hashing up with my family or people that I knew because I just wanted someone like who wouldn't have so many emotions tied to what I experienced. And I didn't want to have other people's emotions or thoughts who really were probably coming from or I know they were coming from a place where they really care about me. I wanted that new perspective outside of my own reality, outside of my own world that could really help me move these things and just like peel back all of these things that were making me feel so heavy. So I don't know if it was one big moment or one big thing, but it was like I just knew I couldn't keep doing. I'm not meant to stay. I wasn't meant to stay where I was, and I was probably never meant to end up there in the sense of like I was because it allowed me to do that self growth, but it wasn't where I was meant to stay forever. So I just knew, let's get things moving a little bit. My business coach had told me, starting a business, the first year is like 10 years of therapy. So I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to like, yeah. And I'm glad she said that to me too, because it really also gave me permission to be like, okay, I also need therapy. I don't just need a business coach who is trauma informed or really compassionate. I need something more that is going to, and I can try all the things. Maybe it's not, I thought maybe it's not hypnotherapy. I don't know, but let's try it. And was just like, let's try. I need to do something different.
Honestly, when I started, I at one point had 5 coaches. right? Because I
Yeah.
had a network marketing coach. I had a marketing coach, which is different than network marketing. I had a personal trainer because I felt I needed to be in optimal shape to show up. I had a business straight on business coach. I mean, I sat down. I didn't realize I had so many, and sat down and I
Yeah.
counted out. I had coaches,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
to help
I
me
think I have 4
figure.
right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Plus, I belonged to women's network. I lived in San Diego at the
Yeah.
time. A women's network, which was in a co-working space. So I had the female support, which was phenomenal for me. It was
Mhm.
absolutely fantastic. And I joined the BNI, Business Network International. So,
Mhm.
those two, along with the 5 coaches, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was crazy, but
Yeah.
I learned what works and what doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? And I was pushed into discovering what works for me,
Mhm.
right? Which is different than what's a canned
Yeah.
package, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's
So
that permission slip again, and
yeah,
that I've had to go through so much, and I know it's something I need to always keep at the top of my mind, being in such great communities and with so many other people, realizing, like, what is working for them. I can try, but it doesn't mean it's gonna work for me, and in fact, actually, my intuition is telling me, like, "Let's go this way," and that's totally okay. It can be so different than anyone else, but it comes back to those permission slips sometimes of just
right.
giving yourself that permission to do things differently.
And when you let go, so I'll do a little plug for what's happened to me because I've totally let go of control, which as the type a recuperating type A, is that what you would call me? Right? Personality. Letting go of control and free falling um,
Yeah.
was something I never thought that I would do. And it is something that I 100% do now. And not that I don't have things structured. I mean, I have my podcast plan, I have those things scheduled, I have
Yeah.
certain things that I do. But on the broader scope, I don't plan what I'm doing. And I have so
Mhm.
much more coming out and happening at the end of March and in April than I have ever had in my.
Oh my gosh, so exciting.
I have 3 books.
Yeah.
I am a contributor to a magazine that is starting at the end of the month. And I'll tell you about that too. I have a presentation that I'm doing and a training that I'm doing. Hello, none of it
Yeah.
was planned out and scheduled out, right?
Yeah.
It all came because I was open
Mhm.
to say yes to possibilities,
Yes. Ones that are beyond our imaginations.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, this book, never would, and I have another one coming. It's like, okay, I'll write that one too, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not a writer, but I am a storyteller,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Right. And so when you go with the flow, and flow is actually what the book is about,
Mhm.
that means you have to let go of control, right?
Mhm.
And so, what has it been like for you now living in flow?
Mhm. I think it's one of those things that perhaps has always came quite easy to me, but I've always fought it to do the harder thing because it just seemed too easy and maybe not what everyone else around me was doing. So it is kind of coming back home to myself in a way and just allowing myself to do things that feel easy and that invite that ease into, and I love that you talked about your writing because I have always been a writer. I've always loved writing. And it was something I didn't really do outside of a report format for a long time or a presentation format. So now I'm having these opportunities as well to do more writing. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay, I don't have to be one thing. I don't just have to be a hypnotherapist or a business designer or a service designer or a facilitator or a workshop designer. I can also write about, my life. I can sit down and write about love or what, like that's so easy for me when I'm in these different workshops, different communities I'm in, or prompted with certain questions. It's like totally that flow of like, hey, I'm not gonna overthink this. I'm not gonna figure out, how I need to do this or how I need to answer this question or what the purpose is, or sounding really intelligent or backed up with facts or whatever it may be. Like, why can't I just let these words flow? And I last week was doing this workbook in this program that I'm in, and it was like I was like I caught myself laughing because I'm like, I can't type fast enough. Like the words were just coming, and it was like so cool. And I think that's like the most ultimate flow I have really experienced as of late. And it was like just so funny because I'm like, oh, it's so like, how easy is this? It's just
And
amazing.
that's the thing. I had a conversation with a gentleman today, as a matter of fact, about um, a post I did, and then we'll wrap this up. And the post, because I'm looking at everything from a flow state, I'm looking at everything upside down,
Yeah.
right? And I'm questioning everything. I'm looking for the truth versus what I have been told is the truth.
Right.
And I took Maslow's triangle of hierarchy, which has the chakra as the base and
Mhm.
self-actualization as the top. He didn't know he was
Mhm.
teaching business people chakras, but that's what he was doing.
Mhm.
Smart man, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I said, what if that's a lie?
Mhm.
If that's a lie, what would happen if I flipped it upside down? And here's what happened. In the past, we have been told, even from chakras, that you have to work from the bottom up. I have been
Mhm.
told that you cannot feel self-esteem if your base chakra is out of alignment. Well,
Right.
that's bullshit, folks. So I bought that, which means that I have to struggle through my base and get
Mhm.
that all fixed, right?
Right.
In order to make it to where my pain is, self-actualization,
Mhm.
right? If I flip it upside down and I start already knowing that I am,
Mhm.
already knowing that I'm actual, actualized, already
Yeah.
knowing that the universe or whatever you want to call that energy, that entity that created us, where our soul
Yeah.
comes from, is who I am. If I start from there,
Yeah.
everything flows.
I love that.
It happens. I'm not struggling.
Yeah.
It flows. Holy could look at the lie we've been raised on.
Yeah.
You even said that's true. No, it's not. Because if we start knowing, and that's the thing. Believe that you were created from a source, and you are
Mhm.
part of that source. You still are, no matter you take this body away, that source is still there, still who you
Mhm.
are. If you come from there with your decisions, that's what you're doing, you're tapping into that, then it's easy and it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's yeah, that's what I know for me has shifted in like what can I do more of that is easeful and fun and joyful? And that's like become my guiding light just to ground me back into like why. Like I don't need to know why besides, sometimes finding ease, experiencing fun and feeling joyful. So it's yeah, it really when you strip the other stuff away, having some sort of anchor or guiding light can be just
Yeah.
yeah, so
I work with
impactful.
my clients to find their word. My word is delicious.
Oh,
If it's not delicious,
delicious.
why would I do it?
Yeah.
Right? Why if it's not delicious, then it's distasteful, and why would I take a bite when there's a
Yeah,
delicious over here?
totally.
Right? Right? So life is yummy.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice.
It's awesome. So Lauren, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way?
Yeah, I think you could definitely join my newsletter website, which is lauren-best.com. You can find a link to my newsletter on there, or you can /newsletter. And that is, I think, the best way because you're going to get my updates on any podcast interviews. Once this one goes live, you'll be updated on that. You'll also see my weekly radio show, which Gail is going to be a guest on soon. So those go out every week. So you'll get updates on that. I send out a really lovely, juicy monthly love letter and some special thoughts and love along the way. So definitely check that out, and you'll kind of be connected to my world in all the different places. I'm also an Insight Timer as well at Lauren_Best_co, and I have a bunch of hypnosis audios on there that people can listen to for free as well. So it's really great to be over there.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Lauren, and all that information and more will be in the show notes. So this is such a joy, so much fun.
Thank you. So much fun, so delicious.
So delicious, so yummy. If this episode resonated with you, give us a thumbs up and let us know. If you know someone who maybe could find some value in this show, share it out to them. And as always, please be sure that you subscribe because you want to know about all of the episodes. And this is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailkraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.